Welcome to the Empowered Wife podcast, where it's all about fixing your relationship without your man's conscious effort so you feel desired, taken care of, and special, even if your relationship feels completely hopeless. I'm Laura Doyle, and today we're talking about what to do when your husband is not attracted to you, why it's probably not what you think, and how to solve the real problem. My guest, Tess, was devastated, heartbroken, and shocked when her husband fell in love with her best friend, who ironically was a marriage therapist. Her husband was so cold and unloving that she just wanted to leave. But then again, she didn't really want to leave because she wanted her husband back. Then she made the best decision she ever made. She started doing something that put an end to her insecurities and had her husband declare his undying love for her and her alone. Then I'll be giving out the award for the worst relationship advice of the week, which you hear all the time is something you should do, but actually can't be done. It's impossible. And if there's anything you don't need when you're struggling in your relationship, it's impossible advice that sets you up to fail. All that is coming up. But first, let's talk about what to do when your husband is not attracted to you. One of the most common problems I hear from wives is that their husband is not attracted to them anymore. And it's always heartbreaking because I remember how lousy that felt. And like me, these women usually think the problem is either that she married the wrong guy, or it's because of her weight or her age or her post-baby body that has made her less physically attractive. And it is so painful to think that you don't look good enough to get a pat on the butt or bedroom eyes anymore. But how she looks, that is just not the issue. Nor is it that she married the wrong guy. Those weren't the problems in my marriage when my husband was acting repulsed instead of attracted to me. Something else entirely was going on, and it was a huge relief to finally discover it and get those pats on the butt back and those bedroom eyes back. The problem was actually pretty simple to fix, and it had a lot of other benefits for me. Here's what I did that got my husband to be ridiculously attracted to me again. Number one thing I did was I stopped acting like his mother. And as you already know, men are not sexually attracted to their mothers, and they aren't sexually attracted to women, even supermodels, who act like their mothers either. Unfortunately, that was exactly who I had unwittingly become in the early years of our marriage, his mom. I didn't think it was so bad to buy his underwear and remind him not to forget his wallet or tell him he was watching too much TV or that it was time to get some chores done. It seemed fine to me, helpful, actually. I even joked with my friends about it. I was making comments like, I have one child. He's 38. I didn't see anything wrong with that because I knew lots of other women who were the same way. As I kvetched with my friends, we all agreed that we had to treat our husbands like children because they acted like children. One friend told me how she had to inform her husband that there was this big building near their house where he could buy food. It's called a grocery store, she told him. Another one had to tell her husband when it was time to get a haircut. She said she had to lay down the law about it. And still another made all of her husband's doctor and dentist appointments and woke him up to go to work, like a human alarm clock. So I figured taking care of my husband was just part of being a wife. But it wasn't long before he seemed to be avoiding me. And that really hurt. I felt lonely and rejected. And in some ways, I wasn't very attracted to him either, just as mothers aren't sexually attracted to their sons. Ew. I was also resentful about having to do everything for him. I wondered why he just couldn't do more for himself. The second thing I did when I realized he wasn't attracted to me was I decided to become his lover again. And besides assuming I wasn't physically attractive to him, I also figured he had changed. But looking back now, I can see that I didn't act like his mom when we were dating. Back in the glory days, I was flirting. I was laughing at his jokes. I was smiling at him. I was thanking him for taking me out. I admired him, and he couldn't keep his hands off of me. So maybe he wasn't the one who changed. And the third thing I did is I decided I was going to trust him. So even with this realization, with this insight, I had a hard time figuring out how to resign from my maternal role in our marriage, even though I had volunteered for it. I thought that if I stopped being responsible for everything, he would have holes in his underwear. He would never go to the doctor. He would watch too much TV, and he would let the trash pile up endlessly. But I decided to experiment anyway because, first of all, I was exhausted. And second of all, I was lonely. So he is a grown man, totally capable at work. So I had to believe there was a possibility that he could manage the things that I'd taken over, even though it didn't seem like it to me at the time. So I decided I wouldn't do anything for him that he could do for himself. I decided I wouldn't do anything for him that he could do for himself. Yeah, I repeated that because I don't want you to miss that part. If he could do it for himself, I didn't need to do it. And sure enough, that's when my husband stepped up and took care of business like the grown man he is. Only he didn't do it the way I would have done things. I was tempted to tell him why he should do it my way, why my way was better. But when I did, that just got me back into the dreaded mom role. And that wasn't the role I wanted with him. So I stopped doing things for him and teaching him how to do them. And I treated him like he didn't need any help. And a funny thing happened. He started to pat my butt again, and he made bedroom eyes at me again. And now that I don't mother my husband anymore, he's back to stealing a kiss whenever he can. He is attracted to me again. Go figure. It's not just me. Thousands of women who have decided they'd rather be their husband's lover than his mother have had the same experience of the passion coming back and being as hot as ever. If you're wondering how to get started with fixing your relationship and making it shiny again, then you need a roadmap. Get 6 simple steps to follow that will set your relationship up for success. Discover 3 common mistakes that wives make trying to fix their relationship that just make things worse when you download my free Adored Wife Roadmap. You can do that at getcherished.com. Go to getcherished.com now to get your roadmap in minutes. My guest, Tess, was devastated, heartbroken, and shocked when her husband fell in love with her best friend, who was a marriage therapist. Her husband was so cold and unloving that she just wanted to leave him. But then again, she didn't really want to leave him because she wanted her husband back. Then she made the best decision she ever made, and she started doing something that put an end to her insecurities and had her husband declare his undying love for her and for her alone. And she was able to put it behind her and choose her faith in her marriage. And now she sees how he just wants to please her. She's going to tell us all about her journey. Welcome to the Empowered Wife podcast, Tess.
Thank you so much, Laura. It's just a pleasure to be here.
Well, take us back to the bad old days. There was a day when you realized your husband had fallen for someone else. Tell us about that.
Yes, well, this was quite an amazing experience because I was with a friend. I'd gone up to a friend's house and we'd gone for a walk, and we'd come back to the car and I was standing there talking to her, and then all of a sudden I had this massive bolt go through my body, and it said my husband was down at my best friend's house. And I was talking to my friend, and I thought, oh my God, I can't tell her what just happened. And I just heard myself hurrying up the conversation and going, yes, okay, yes, all right, I'll see you tomorrow. And I hopped in the car and my heart was beating so fast, and I drove straight down to my best friend's house, and there was my husband's car, and I went inside. My mouth was so dry, my heart was out of my chest, and there they were in the kitchen solving all the world's problems. And I thought, oh my God, this is true. Like I had no idea. And so I pretended to be like the goddess of fun and light, and that, hey, I hadn't just had this message that my husband was in love with my best friend. So I sat on my husband's knee and I was laughing away with them and I was pretending, but inside I was just having this huge breakdown, like, God, it's true, my husband's in love with my best friend. Anyway, we left, and I said to my husband, "Are you in love with my best friend? Because this is just what happened to me." And he said, "Yes, I am." And I was just devastated. And I drove back down to my best friend and I said, "My husband's in love with you." And she said, "I'll kick him in the knees." And I was just crying and crying to her. And then I went back home, and then began the journey of I really wanted to leave, but I wanted to stay, but I didn't know how I was going to get through it.
No. And so, I mean, you did want to leave, but you also wanted to stay. I mean,
Yeah.
was that kind of a daily battle as this, as this was unfolding? What kinds of conversations were you having with your husband around this?
Laura, it was a daily battle. It was like I was continually asking my husband, do you want to stay with me? Or do you want to be with her? I know you want to be with her because she's prettier and more intelligent and more this and more that. No, I just wore him out. I wore him out with this conversation, just like the same conversation where you keep asking, does my bum look big in these pants? It's like just that was daily. It was a daily onslaught. And he said to me, "Tess, I can't take this anymore." And that was the point when I realized I chose to not mention her name anymore. I made a decision in my mind to not mention her name anymore, and that was such a challenge because all these thoughts would come up. Oh my God, I wonder if he's thinking about her now. I wonder if he wants to be with her now, or what would she be doing now? Or, oh, yeah, I could torture myself. So that's what I did. I just didn't mention her name anymore. I decided that I did want to be with my husband, and he'd given me a clue. He said, "I can't handle this anymore." So I somehow had the intuition and the skill to just not mention her name anymore and work on my own self-worth and just say to myself, he wants to be with me. He wants to be with me. He's here, But even then, I didn't see that as a sign from my husband that he was still with me and he wanted to be with me, not like I understand it now. And so I just had to keep. It was like kind of climbing up a slippery slide. I'd get to the top and then slide back down, and then get to the top and slide back down again. Oh my God, it was exhausting. But with practice, I built that muscle, and I started. I could, we started to sort of have more closeness. There wasn't always that pained look on his face when I'd mention her name. So things got a little bit better, and I just I chose faith over fear, and I did have a daily battle with it, but once I started building that muscle, it sort of got easier and easier, but I still knew there was something missing.
What about the part of you that was just so mad at him too? I mean, didn't you also have days where you wanted to throw him out?
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm just wondering.
Yeah,
you're more a woman.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. There was like, I think, there would be some doors slamming. Like I would feel, when I was being vulnerable and kind of forgiving of him, and then he'd come to me, then I would feel angry with him again, because it would be like, how dare you think you can just, come up to me and be loving to me, and what about what you did? So it would activate that old memory again. Yeah. So then I'd get angry and turn away, and I'd be a real porcupine and cold and just reject his love, time and time again. And once again, I sort of, I realized that I just couldn't keep doing that, because that was pushing him away. And and now what I know now, that he wanted to be with me, but I just couldn't still see it. Yeah. So I was pushing him away, and I was angry.
Yeah, there's like a flip flop there, right? Like, I'm mad at you, like you don't deserve me, and then like, wait, do you want to stay? Are you sure you want to stay with me? Right? Like, kind of I think this is the human experience in your situation, though. I think this is I mean, so many women in your shoes have gone through that very roller coaster you're describing. So I think it's, it's just thank you for explaining it so authentically. So what happened? I mean, you're still married. How did that happen?
Yeah. well, just like you said, Laura, it's like, how dare you, but I want you. How dare you, but I want you. Yes. So I guess it was the decision for me to, like I said before, not mention her name and think about how can I make myself happy? How can I? I actually started saying things. I actually started saying to my husband, "Thank you." I remember that. I started saying thank you when he did things. I somehow clicked onto this thing of complimenting him rather than criticizing him. And I remember the day I started. I remember when he had a shirt on, and I wanted to compliment him, but I just felt so vulnerable saying it. But I knew I wanted to stop criticizing and start complimenting. So I said to him, "You look great in that shirt." I felt really self-conscious and vulnerable. It's like,
Sure.
like,
Yeah.
like I'd never done it before. And so, yes, I remember that. I just started saying thank you and complimenting rather than criticizing. I just remember that. And so wherever I could, I started complimenting. So, the warmth started coming back into our relationship, and he started saying nice things to me. And, I still got a little bit triggered when he got really lovey-dovey and that little memory come back, how could you? But that's what I chose to just let go of and just receive. I didn't do it 100%. But yeah, that's how it kind of started mending.
Did he ever say, "I'm leaving you for her"?
No, he actually didn't. He actually didn't say that. He was thinking about it. He didn't say he was going to leave me, but he didn't know whether he was going to stay. So that, yeah.
Yeah.
So there was a little bit of a tightrope there for a moment. And I think, if I'd carried on pushing him away, by not changing what I was doing, then I'm pretty sure he would have chosen her. But he actually wanted to be with me. But he was still considering it.
Yes. And so you were really you were fighting for your marriage at this point.
Actually, I was fighting for my marriage, Laura, and that's one thing that my husband said to me that made him stay, that he felt like I was fighting for my marriage. And I never knew that. I never knew that he saw those things that I was doing and saying to him were fighting for my marriage, and he felt wanted. And yeah, that was a real eye-opener for me.
How so? Why was that an eye-opener?
Because I thought that he knew that I loved him. Yeah, I thought that he knew that I loved him. And now I realize I was being very unloving. I wasn't showing him any love at all.
You mean prior to this breakdown?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you managed, you rebuilt from what you had, you started complimenting, and then you also started seeking some support for your marriage. Tell us about that.
I did. I was, well, for me, I read a lot of books and listened to things on YouTube, how I could change things. And I felt like there was something missing. So I sort of was dragging my husband along to all of these marriage counseling things. And he would go, he would come along. He didn't want to, but he did want to please me. I understand that now. And there was one particular one we went to, it was a retreat, and we had to drive to it, and oh my God, I just can see my husband driving along thinking, oh God, like just another thing, another one. And when we got there, there was this man and wife. They were the marriage therapists, and they had this beautiful dog. That was probably the nicest thing of the session. Anyway, actually, that wasn't the nicest thing. When we got into the session, they said, "Okay, now what we want you to do, we want you to say something like 20 things that you love about your wife or your husband." And Dave just said all these most amazing things to me, and I just couldn't take them in. I still didn't believe them. I'm like, oh my God. When I look back now and think, hell, he just was loved me so much. And I just couldn't take these words in. I was like, oh my God, you're like a poet. That's amazing. And then I had to say my things. But so there was lots of that, but it didn't, there was still something missing. It didn't change my ability to receive love inside of me, or my ability to find my joy rather than expecting him to give it to me. I had a lot of expectations about him making me happy, but I didn't realize the secret was for me to make myself happy, even though I was looking for it.
Yeah. And did you have some things that you wanted him to do differently in the marriage too, it sounds like, right?
Yeah.
Why would you be bringing him to these marriage counseling things, right?
That's right. Yeah. I just wanted him to change because I thought, I was perfect. I just remember thinking that, if he changed, I would, our marriage would be perfect. And, I wanted him to be more romantic. I wanted him to, be a new age man, like think the same things that I did about how I was parenting and all of that he should, do things my way because my way was the highway.
Yes, clearly. Yes, I relate to this so much. So, all right. And so you continued to seek solutions to get him to change. What happened?
Yeah, I continued to seek solutions. And I sort of had this epiphany that, there was something inside of me. And then what happened was that Laura Doyle popped up in my Facebook feed page. And I bought the book and I read it and I thought, oh my goodness, this is what I've been looking for. This is the difference between men and women for a start. And the power is in my hands. I run the tone of the relationship. And I just started having all these flashbacks about Dave saying, what do you want? What do you want? In your book, Laura, you talk about stating your desires. And I think that was a huge piece that was missing in our relationship, that I didn't know my desires. And like I say, when I flashed back to all these times when Dave said, what do you want? What do you want? And I was like, I don't know what I want. I don't know. And so I was unpleasable. And I remember Dave saying to me, unpleasable. I can't please you. I can't please you. And then when I read your words, it was like, pleasability. Oh my God. State your desires. And wow, that was a huge, huge awareness for me. That was peace.
Which book did you read?
I read the Empowered Wife.
The Empowered Wife. Okay. And so you started realizing like, oh, I need to own my desires and say and so is this something you started doing?
I did. And it was really, really uncomfortable, Laura. And that was super uncomfortable because I felt very self-conscious and very vulnerable saying I'd love to go out for coffee. I'd love to have a salt lamp, or I would love to just really simple things. And I just was aware of how self-conscious I felt. And Dave said, right, let's go and get a coffee. And when he used to take me out to coffee, he would say, where do you want to go? And that's what I changed after reading the book, because I would always say, I don't know. That was my mantra. And that drove Dave nuts. Or he'd start to drive somewhere and I'd go, oh, no, I think I want to go. Oh, my God. So I really, so getting into, so yeah, I was a nightmare. So getting in touch with my desires was huge. That in your book, and even now I'm still working on that today, Laura. That's been, that's always been really hard for me, because it's like, well, I'll just do what you do. I would say, do you want to go to the movies? Or instead of me saying, I would love to go to the movies, or do you want to go? I had a terrible, terrible habit of saying that. So out of your book, that's one of the amazing skills that's really helped me, because that was where I just had an absolute blind spot for my desires. I didn't know that I could sort of have desires, even though I used to have desires. I'd want to go to aerobics, or I'd want to, but I didn't do it in a empowered way. I'd just say, I've got to go. Like, I didn't understand that was looking after myself, but I did it in a porcupine way. Whereas now I understand, right, I'd love to I think I'm going to book a yoga course or something like that. I'd love to go to yoga. It's just really getting in touch with what I want, with what makes me feel good. And Dave's never stopped me. My battle cry too was like, "You're stopping me." He never stopped me. I was stopping myself. Yeah, didn't know.
So you decided to take your training with this further.
And so, Laura, that's the thing. Like I saw it and I thought, oh my God, I just want to do the training. I want to be a relationship coach. I just want to turn the volume up on everything. And I knew that this would be, and also share with other women and these amazing skills that just helped turn my marriage around,
But you almost stopped yourself, didn't you?
What's that, Laura?
You almost stopped yourself.
I almost stopped myself, and that's yes, I almost stopped myself. So what I did was I thought I want to do this training come hell or high water, and so I thought, oh, how am I going to ask my husband, because I had all the evidence that I just couldn't do it. We just had a lot of financial pressures, and he'd even said, he might not be renewing his job, and I thought I can't ask him, but I thought I've got to do it. So I saw that I could have a discovery call with Kathy, and I rung her up and we started talking, and all of a sudden I started freaking out, and I said to Kathy, look, Kathy, I'm sorry for taking up your time. I can't do this. I really want to do it, and I realised as I'm talking to you now, I can't do it. I'm sorry. I'll see you later. And Kathy said to me, oh, you're too afraid to state your desires. And I went, yes. And I got off the phone and I thought, oh my God, I just kept hearing Kathy's voice. You're too afraid to state your desires. And that was one of the things that was pivotal in changing my marriage. And I thought, I've got to do this. And the time frame for the training was coming up. And so I sent my husband this message and I said, I would love to do my relationship coach training. It really resonates with me. And I just know that it's the next level for me. And it's what I've always believed in. I just love it. I've found what I'm looking for. And he texted me back and he said, yep, do it. You'll be good at it.
The rest is history. So you did. You're enrolled in coach training.
Yeah.
You didn't stop yourself. And of course, your husband had no intention of stopping you, it sounds like. And how did that impact your relationship?
Oh, Laura, well, the first thing that I started doing was that I realized that I was being his mother. And I would do everything for him. That was taking things to the next level. I didn't sort of understand that until I started being in the practicums and hearing other people's stories and deepening my understanding of the skills. And so the first thing actually I started doing was I stopped putting his clothes away, because he's away for quite a few. He's away for 3 weeks and home for 3 weeks. And he'd always have this big pile of clothes on his chair, and it used to really annoy me because I wanted the bedroom to look how I wanted it to look, and I stopped doing that because I thought, oh my God, that's so mothering. I want to be his lover, not his mother, and also I stopped looking for things. He'd say, "Where's my glasses? Have you seen this?" And my mum was an expert at helping Dad. Like he would say, "Have you seen my?" And before he could even say what he was wanting to look for, she found it. So I was good at that. I was so good at that, and I stopped doing it, and it was really uncomfortable because I'd see Dave wandering around looking for it, and I thought I could help him find that. I know I can find it, anything, or I could put his clothes away from him. Anyway, when he came home, he would put his clothes away, but every time it happened, there was always a pile of clothes every time he went away. So, and then about the third time he came home, he said, "Oh yeah, I get it. That's what he said to me, and we laughed. And I knew what he was like. It's like, you're not going to put my clothes away, are you?
And he wasn't mad. It was playful. It was funny.
He was playful, Laura. And that's what's another thing that's since doing the training is I really wanted that playfulness in my relationship, and that's what I've really turned the volume up on, I suppose, because it's so much more playful, and he's playful, and I started sending him playful texts and subjects that might have been touchy before could just put this playful element to it.
Love it. I love it. So if you could talk to yourself back, maybe just before this breakdown, what would you say?
Oh boy, there's so many different things that I could say, but I guess the thing that I would say probably is that my husband wanted to please me all the time, and I just didn't see it. I couldn't see it. I literally couldn't see it. And even, my friends would say to me, your husband's amazing. He takes the kids out, he cleans the stove, he does this, he does that. Oh my God, I was so ungrateful, and yet I didn't think I was. Yeah, I was unpleasable. I realize that now. Yeah.
What would you say to a woman who's maybe in the situation that this heartbreaking, devastating shock of finding out that her husband is in love with someone else? What advice do you have for her?
I would say get some coaching and get the link to Laura Doyle. But I think that the main thing is for me, like personally, I think it's come back onto your page. Like I came back onto my page and what can I control? What can I do for me? How can I make myself feel better? Because I can't control what my husband's doing, thinking or feeling. So how can I change what I'm feeling and what I'm thinking? And that's where the empowerment is. That's where I found, surrendering to what I have control of. And I had control of what I thought about myself, how I responded to anything that my husband was doing. I came back to my page, to grow my self-love, to how do I feel, what do I want? It's a challenge, but that's where the answers are, that the empowerment is to surrender to what he's doing or what he's thinking, and to get in touch with who am I, how do I feel, and what do I want, really, and that's what I did. I dug into getting support for me. How can I take good care of me? As painful as it is, even though I didn't want to do those things, how can I get back to me? Because that's all I can control.
And what is your relationship like now that...
Oh, Laura. Well, my husband's just surprised me with a trip to Melbourne, and I had to cancel my partner-client coaching thing tomorrow. Flying to Melbourne tomorrow, and and lots of holidays. But, and he's always saying thank you to me. He's always making the bed and saying, would you like to go out for dinner? And, sometimes he still irritates me. I still think, oh, my God, he's so controlling. But now I've got the skills. I can just turn that thought around, and I did it the other day. I thought he really irritated me, and I thought he was being controlling. And so I turned it around and I said to him, oh, you're so in control. And it's true. It's true. And we got in the car, and it was hard for me to say that, because I just really wanted to say to him, you're so controlling, because I felt so irritated, but I didn't want to scratch that itch or scratch that itch. I didn't want to do that. Anyway, so I said to him, you're so in control. And anyway, we got in the car and we drove downtown, and when we got out of the car, I was on the pavement and he hopped out, and then when he stood beside me, he pushed me over to the left, to the inside of the pavement, just with his fingers. It was so sexy. I was like, oh my God, that just happened. Like, that felt so sexy. And I'm even feeling kind of like a little bit shy about feeling that, how sexy it was. And I wanted to tell him, and I just couldn't even quite tell him, because I was reveling in this lovely feeling of like, God, that felt good. That felt so good. I felt so loved. I was smiling inside. It was, you hear these things and you think, yeah, that really happened to me. And that's what my relationship's like now.
I love it. And I mean, it's to come from the precipice of a breakup like you did, right? There was a moment when your marriage was definitely in peril, and to create this where he's taking you on a romantic getaway now, and he puts the hand on on the small of your back or wherever it was, and just sends electricity all through your body. It's quite a transformation, such a beacon of hope for women who are maybe going through the same thing and want to know, what does the future hold? What can it hold? What's possible for me? And I think your message is very loud and clear.
Absolutely, Laura. I think there's a book, and the title is "A Successful Marriage is Falling in Love Again and Again." And I think it was probably written by you in a different guise. and under a different name, and that's what the skills have and my relationship coach training have brought. It's like, I can just I can keep really just changing. I run the tone of our marriage. I understand that now. So, how I am is how my relationship's going to be. And it is so empowering, and there is so much hope. I think anyone at any stage can change with the skills. My marriage was down the ditch, really.
It's a remarkable story, and thank you so much for coming on to share it with us. This has been wonderful.
Thank you so much, Laura. It's my pleasure.
If you're wondering how to get started with fixing your relationship and making it shiny again, then you need a roadmap. Get 6 simple steps to follow that will set your relationship up for success. Discover 3 common mistakes that wives make trying to fix their relationship that just make things worse when you download my free Adored Wife Roadmap. You can do that at getcherished.com. Go to getcherished.com now to get your roadmap in minutes. And now it's time for the Worst Relationship Advice of the Week award.
It's the worst relationship advice of the worst relationship advice. Yeah, it's the worst relationship advice of the worst relationship advice of the week.
And the advice that's got me fired up this week is that you can improve your relationship by, get this, learning to fight fair. The implication is that fighting can be productive, but fighting is neither fair nor productive. That's why they call it fighting. Pretending it can be otherwise is holding out a false hope, the kind of thing that people with no relationship skills might imagine would work, but it never does. But even if fighting fair was an option, it's not one I'd recommend. Preventing fights is actually much more effective because fighting just isn't that much fun and it damages the intimacy. When my husband and I raise our voices, it's generally because one or both of us is beyond tired or otherwise out of sorts. And one way to minimize the damage in those cases is to delay the conversation until we've slept or calmed down a bit. And the way to prevent those conversations to begin with is to be vigilant about filling myself up with self-care. It's pretty rare that we fight at all now. We used to have plenty of big battles, but not anymore. It wasn't learning to fight fair that turned things around, but learning how to have reserves so that I can show up as the calm, respectful woman I want to be. That's been a big improvement. For those reasons, the advice that you need to learn to fight fair is the worst advice I've heard all week. Be sure to listen and subscribe to the Empowered Wife podcast. Next week, I'll be sharing what to do when your man hurts your feelings. Are you having any fun? Today's fun fact is that the hobby I could never give up is untangling my headphones.